Hello there, I'm Lloyd Evans and you're watching the John Cedars channel from The Bunker. And speaking of The Bunker, you'll notice that there have been a few improvements since the last video. I'm not done making improvements. This is a work in progress, so expect more changes in the future. But never mind all that. I want to talk to you about bans. Now, those of you who follow my channel closely will know that I've got some fairly strong views about what's going on in Russia right now, where Jehovah's Witnesses are under ban. I made a video recently about how Jehovah's Witnesses, there's even been reports of Jehovah's Witnesses being tortured in that country, and how I think that this is reprehensible, and if anything, it only helps the narrative of the leadership of the religion, because they can point to needless oppression and brutality by certain countries as evidence that the theology is true. And what's interesting is that the whole issue of bans has been brought up in the latest Watchtower study edition. Rather than read the whole article, which is all about persecution, I want to zero in on, I think 3 or 4 paragraphs should do it, under a heading, "Will a ban end our worship of Jehovah?" If you don't mind, I'm going to go through paragraph by paragraph. Paragraph 5 there says, "Mere human opposers cannot stamp out the worship of the Almighty God, Jehovah. Many have tried and failed. Consider what happened during World War II. At that time, governments in many countries intensely persecuted God's people. The work of Jehovah's Witnesses was banned not only by the Nazi Party in Germany, but also by governments in Australia, Canada, and other lands. Yet, note what took place. In 1939, when the war began, there were 72,475 publishers worldwide. Reports showed that by the end of the war in 1945, with Jehovah's blessing, there were 156,299 publishers. The number of publishers had more than doubled." Now, this is an interesting point. I'm not sure I can fully agree with the logic here, which seems to be that whenever Jehovah's Witnesses are banned, rather than ending the work or stifling the success of the work, the work is actually more successful, seems to be the argument here, that during World War II, the global membership of Jehovah's Witnesses doubled over that period, even though in a number of countries, including Germany, the work was banned. I don't think that has necessarily anything to do with the ban, because as far as I'm aware, the work wasn't banned in the United States, and that's very much the heartland of Jehovah's Witnesses. And bear in mind, the movement was much smaller back then than it is now. So let's say, I can't give you the figures, but let's say that the core of the membership was based in America. If the numbers increase in America sufficiently, they will compensate for the fact that the numbers are reducing in other countries. That seems to me to be what happened. But how chilling it would be if, hypothetically speaking, bans did improve the situation of the organization numerically in terms of membership. That is repeatedly what you read in Watchtower publications, that's the case. Again, I would need to see more concrete proof of that, but it is certainly a chilling thought. The next paragraph, paragraph 6, "Rather than intimidate us, opposition can motivate us to serve Jehovah more fully. For example, one couple who had a young child lived in a country where the government decided to ban our worship. Instead of shrinking back in fear, the couple began regular pioneering. The wife even quit her well-paying job to do so. The husband said that the ban made many people curious about Jehovah's Witnesses. As a result, he found it easier to start Bible studies. The ban had a positive effect on others as well. An elder in the same country commented that many who had stopped serving Jehovah began to attend meetings and were reactivated. So this paragraph would be disturbing regardless of whether it had the ban in it or not. So let's say that this couple in question are not in a country under ban. You've got the mother quitting a well-paying job even though they have a young child. They think that the most responsible thing for them to do when they have a young child on their hands is for them both to regular pioneer, which for those of you who don't know, involves spending 70 hours, committing to spending 70 hours per month doing the preaching work, and they've got a young child. I don't think that's remotely responsible with or without the ban, but especially when you bring the ban into the equation and you're using this as the reason for saying this is a fantastic idea. So Watchtower is here saying, well, when you have our organization banned so that you can actually be arrested or imprisoned or worse for publicly endorsing or following our religion, wouldn't that be a great scenario for two parents of a young child to be regular pioneering? No, especially not in that situation, because what happens to the young child if the parents are arrested? It seems to me to be grossly reckless to be, for a religion like Jehovah's Witnesses, to be actively encouraging their members to abnegate their responsibilities as parents in this situation and say, to hell with the fact that we've got a young child who we're responsible for, who we need to provide for, and we need to be there for emotionally apart from anything. No. Both parents regular pioneering, please, and running the gauntlet as to whether they get arrested. Shockingly negligent advice being given there by Watchtower, and there's more to come, I'm afraid. So paragraph 7, when our enemies ban our worship, they hope to make us afraid to serve Jehovah. In addition to the ban, they may circulate false stories, sending officials to search our homes, drag us to court, or even imprison some of us. They hope that we will be terrified because they managed to put a small number of us in prison. I'm just going to leave it there for this paragraph because I want to highlight the utter hypocrisy and dishonesty that's going on here. Well, first of all, you have this phrase, false stories, which is code for anything in the media that makes us look bad. If there's a report in the news and it makes Jehovah's organization look bad, it is false stories and you're not to listen to it. And they're tying together this instruction for witnesses to not listen to the media selectively. They're lumping it all together in this whole paranoia surrounding bans and the way Satan's system of things treats Jehovah's Witnesses. And then it in an act of utter hypocrisy, the paragraph says, send officials to search our homes, drag us to court. Oh, drag us to court. So being unfairly dragged to court is wrong, is it? Well, wouldn't it be nice if Watchtower could revisit the way it's treating former members who are speaking out against the organisation? If you haven't before seen the Watchtower in Focus episode, Subpoena Warfare, where we talk about this issue, you're in for a treat or a shock or utter anger when you revisit this wording. Because what's happening is Watchtower is becoming increasingly litigious in the way it's responding to activists like myself. I'm actually one of the lucky ones. I just got a cease and desist letter a year ago threatening me with legal action for embarrassing Watchtower over Pillowgate. I kid you not. I read from the letter and show parts of it in the Watchtower in Focus episode. Again, I'm one of the lucky ones because I am a public activist and I don't mind people knowing what my identity is. Watchtower couldn't really do much with me, but for those who are so-called physically in, mentally out, who are having to do their work undercover from inside the organization, including leaking documents, Watchtower is subpoenaing tech giants like Google and Facebook and Reddit and legally trying to extract the personal information on these individuals so that it can go after them and disfellowship them and get their families to shun them. Absolutely outrageous stuff. And yet here they have the cheek to moan about authorities dragging Jehovah's Witnesses to court. Utter hypocrisy. Paragraph 8. I'm not done yet. The title or the heading is, Should I Move to Another Land? In paragraph 8 it says, if the government where you live bans our worship, you may wonder if you should move to a country where you can serve Jehovah freely. This is a personal decision that no one else can make for you. Some might find it helpful to consider what Christians in the first century did when they were persecuted. After enemies stoned Stephen to death, the disciples in Jerusalem moved throughout Judea and Samaria, and even as far as Phoenicia, Cyprus, and Antioch. However, others might note that after another wave of persecution afflicted the first century Christians, the Apostle Paul decided not to move away from areas where the preaching work was opposed. Instead, he risked his safety to spread the good news and to strengthen the brothers in cities that were suffering intense persecution. Now, to be fair to Watchtower, I've got to give them at least some credit for presenting this as a, well, you could do this or you could do this. But the simple fact remains that the least desirable of those two scenarios, namely staying in or moving to a country where the work is banned, has been saved for last and has even been given a scriptural precedent. So that, quite frankly, if I were reading this paragraph as a Jehovah's Witness, with the order in which those two scenarios are presented, I think, oh, well, what it's telling me I should really do is stay in a country where the work is banned, thus endangering myself. Thus, effectively, in a worst case scenario, martyring myself for the religion. They want to put me in harm's way. And there's actually, this isn't the first time they've expressed this sort of twisted logic, or they've encouraged witnesses in this direction, because when you do some research into the run-up to World War II and the way witnesses in Germany were treated, when it became clear that the Nazi regime were banning Jehovah's Witnesses, they received instructions from Rutherford, who was issuing these instructions from the safety of Beth Sarim over on the other side of the planet in San Diego. He ordered the witnesses in Germany to not just to defy the ban by preaching anyway, but specifically to distribute leaflets that were condemning the Nazi government. In other words, to poke the Nazis, to prod them into even greater anger against the organization. And we all know how things escalated from there. So that's the sort of organization we're dealing with. This is an organization that seems to crave opportunities to put witnesses in danger. And I want to share with you some notes from a talk. I'm going to read to you these notes, and then I'm going to let you know where the talk is from. Well, it's been 6 months since my wife and I shared a circuit visit with all of you in this congregation. It's good to see that so many of you have got past the sniffer dogs and police helicopters and made it to the forest for our meeting this evening. It's certainly been difficult since the work here in England came under ban, but it's very encouraging to see so many of you continuing to support the congregation's activities. Before we go into our arrangements for field service this week, I wanted us to consider a scripture that may prove encouraging, James 1 verses 2 to 4. So we could think, here we are now sat on tree trunks in the middle of a forest, surrounded by police surveillance vehicles and helicopters, and this brother wants us to be happy. We can be happy because by being tested, but by still enduring and not lacking anything, we become very valuable in Jehovah's eyes, just like a diamond glows dimly until it is cut. So if we're all diamonds, how can we sparkle? How can we show ourselves to be truly valuable to Jehovah? Read Acts chapter 5, 27 to 29 and verse 40. The apostles were very valuable to Jehovah. Why? Because they remained obedient to Jehovah and continued preaching even though their work was under ban. That's why we appreciate the zeal of you brothers in supporting our circuit visit this week to whatever extent you can. We've got a number of arrangements for incidental witnessing this week where we'll be trying to tactfully find sheep-like ones, so we encourage everyone to take a share in this activity tomorrow morning. So this is a talk outline for a fictional circuit overseer in a scenario where the work in England is under ban, and the circuit overseer here is encouraging the congregation to get out and defy the ban, essentially, and speak to people anyway. And you might be wondering, who wrote this? Where on earth is this from? I wrote this. I wrote this in 2005 as part of my ministerial training school, because we were given assignments for each of the lessons. And in this particular lesson, the assignment that I was given was encourage the congregation to continue in the preaching work in spite of a ban that has been imposed. And I'm obviously sharing this with you. Well, first of all, it sends a shiver down my spine to reread those words. And I think I'm drawing a lot there from my Armageddon drill, which some of you will probably know about, where my dad told me as a child that we needed to escape to the forest. And it was all a joke. The joke was on me. But it really highlights the fact that, in a way, in a strange way, Jehovah's Witnesses do crave bans. They do crave persecution. Because how does the theology make sense without them? This is the training, indeed, that I was getting in 2005 at my ministerial training school. Presumably there's something similar for students of the School for Kingdom Evangelizers, which is what the MTS ended up becoming. It's part and parcel of the organisation, and it's worth rejecting, or it's worth condemning bans for that reason alone, because whenever there is a ban or whenever there is some form of persecution, Watchtower jumps up and down and says, see, we told you so. Satan's coming for us, all the more reason to stand firm and defy him. But really reckless, irresponsible and hypocritical advice being given to witnesses in this latest July 2019 Watchtower, so I thought it was worth discussing that. I hope you have found this video useful or helpful in some way. Please don't forget to subscribe to the John Cedars channel for more such videos. But for now, thank you so much for watching.